Title: The Courthouse Mistake That Shook a City. The morning sun pierced through the Los Angeles haze, casting sharp reflections off the white granite of the Superior Court building. On the bustling plaza, lawyers, journalists, and civilians streamed through security, unaware they were about to witness the spark that would ignite one of the most explosive legal dramas in California history. Officer Daniel Reed, newly assigned to the downtown precinct after a cushy few years in a quiet coastal town, stood with a lukewarm coffee in hand, watching the crowd. He was tense, alert, and perhaps a little on edge. Maybe it was the new assignment, or maybe it was something deeper. Either way, when he spotted a tall black man in a sleek navy suit approaching the courthouse steps, something about the man's poise rubbed him the wrong way. Too confident, Reed thought. Too sure of himself. As the man approached, Reed stepped forward abruptly, raising a hand to stop him. "Excuse me, sir. I need to see some identification before you proceed." The man halted, his brow arched in disbelief, and several passers-by slowed, sensing a confrontation. "Do you stop everyone on the courthouse steps?" he asked smoothly. "Or just certain people?" There was no anger in his voice, but the message hit like a thunderclap. Reed tensed, aware now of phone cameras pointed his way. The man reached calmly into his coat pocket and withdrew a sleek black wallet, flipping it open to reveal a silver badge bearing the state seal and the words, "California Superior Court Judge." Silence fell. Reed's mouth went dry. This wasn't just anyone. This was Judge Elias Monroe, one of the most respected legal minds in the state and a vocal advocate for justice reform. Monroe said nothing further. He simply let Reed stew in the weight of his mistake. Then, without a word, he walked past the stunned officer. Inside the courthouse, Monroe's footsteps echoed against marble floors as security officers nodded respectfully. Reed trailed behind, his pride wounded and his pulse spiking with anxiety. He had no idea the judge would be the one to reopen a case Reed desperately hoped would stay buried. The long-dormant Pine Ridge Avenue incident, a flashpoint in LAPD's troubled history. It wasn't just a coincidence. Their histories were entwined. Years ago, Reed had been a rookie officer stationed in South LA. A chaotic case from that neighborhood, a shooting, a wrongful arrest, buried evidence, had passed through then freshly appointed Judge Monroe's court. The judge's decision to unseal internal complaints had led to a series of internal affairs investigations that toppled several of Reed's mentors. Though Reed hadn't been charged, the fallout had left him bitter, resentful. And now, here they were again. Back in the lobby, Reed's superior, Captain Gerald Roth, cornered him with barely contained fury. "Are you trying to commit career suicide?" Roth hissed. "That man can end us with one call." Before Reed could respond, Monroe returned, having overheard. "He looked suspicious?" Monroe repeated, his voice sharp. "Is that your idea of probable cause?" With the courthouse whispering and eyes watching, Monroe asked for a private word with the officer. Roth reluctantly agreed. They stepped into a side conference room, where fluorescent lights flickered overhead like bad omens. Monroe sat, motioning for Reed to do the same. "Do you remember the Pine Ridge Avenue case?" the judge asked flatly. Reed stiffened. Of course, he remembered. "The Department of Justice reopened it," Monroe continued. "They've asked for judicial oversight. I was selected." He paused. "You were one of the first officers on that scene." Reed nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." "Then I'd think twice before you decide who to hassle on courthouse steps," Monroe said, his voice cold. "From here on out, your every move will be scrutinized." Outside the room, someone was eavesdropping. Assistant District Attorney Camille Rhodes, known for her ruthlessness and ambition, had paused by the vending machines and overheard just enough to know trouble was coming. The Pine Ridge case, a reopened file. She had once been a secondary prosecutor on that case, but was pulled off for undisclosed conflicts. Rumors whispered about connections to a neighborhood organizer. Now, with the case under a new spotlight, Camille's instincts told her to dig. But she wasn't the only one watching. A security camera above the vending machine caught the entire exchange. Reed emerged from the room with Monroe's warning echoing in his mind. He tried to refocus, to find his footing, but the ground beneath him had already shifted. A few hours later, he received a cryptic message from an unknown number. "Meet me in Sublevel 2 Archives. 3 p.m. Come alone." He hesitated, but curiosity and desperation drove him there. In the dim underbelly of the courthouse, where dust clung to every record. Reed found Camille Rhodes waiting. "I know about the case," she said without preamble. "And I know they're trying to pin it all on you." She handed him a flash drive. Inside is evidence. Emails, memos, communications. Some of it clears you. Some of it implicates others. High-ranking others. Reed's head swam. "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not," she said bluntly. "I'm helping the truth." Upstairs, another crisis was unfolding. A clerk from the district attorney's office collapsed in the cafeteria, coffee spilled across the floor, eyes rolling back. Paramedics arrived, and whispers of poison spread. The clerk had handled sealed records related to Pine Ridge. Judge Monroe called an emergency meeting. "We have to assume a credible threat," he declared. Roth and Internal Affairs Detective Alan Navarro stood nearby, pretending concern. Reed kept quiet. He had questions. Was Roth involved? Navarro? How deep did it go? Later, Monroe caught up to him in a hallway. "We need to talk." Reed followed him to a quiet alcove, where Monroe confided. "Camille thinks you have something. Documents, recordings. If there's a chance to expose the real corruption, we must act fast." Reed nodded. He had the flash drive. But then came the bomb threat. Evacuations, sirens, chaos. Under the veil of panic, Monroe, Camille, and Reed escaped to a safe house in Pasadena, owned by Camille's retired uncle, a former federal agent. There, by the glow of a dusty desk lamp, they plugged in the flash drive. It revealed everything. Payoffs from real estate mogul Henry Callan, alias Kenneth Mollery, suppression orders, emails between officers, DA staff, and corporate go-betweens. Fabricated reports. One even bore Reed's forged signature. More troubling still, documents indicating that Judge Monroe had once been approached to sign off on suppressing those same files, but ultimately refused. "Why didn't you report it?" Reed asked, stunned. Monroe was quiet. "I tried. The moment I pushed, I was threatened. But I stayed on the bench. Watched. Waited. Until now." The next day, Monroe announced a federal hearing. As the courtroom packed with reporters, Camille filed the flash drive as evidence. Callan's team went on defense. Captain Roth and Detective Navarro tried to intercept, but it was too late. Reed testified. The documents were authenticated, and the dominoes fell. Weeks later, indictments followed. Roth and Navarro were charged with conspiracy, tampering, and obstruction. Camille was offered a role leading a new anti-corruption task force. Monroe's credibility soared. Reed was promoted and asked to help train new recruits, teaching them how to recognize ethical failure before it starts. The story made national headlines. The Los Angeles Times dubbed it the Courthouse Reckoning. But the danger wasn't over. One quiet night in Big Bear, while Reed tried to decompress by the lake, his phone rang. "Congratulations, officer," said the same distorted voice from weeks prior. But remember, the game never ends. Reed stared at the moonlit water, the weight of the journey pressing on him. But he felt no fear, just clarity. No matter what shadow rose next, he was ready. Because once you shine light on injustice, you never stop carrying the torch.